quite interesting if you look at some of the polling data that's been done in terms of attitudes in this country towards politics, because one of the things you find out is that there is no institution in British society, from the government to the banks to the media, that has a majority of public support. All of them are in maximum about 40%. So, and that's declined massively from over the last 20 or 30 years. Trust in governments has gone down as well. All these things have been going down. Confidence in democracy in the country have been going down. But interestingly, what's also been happening is the amount of people who protest, come out on the streets and protest, has rocketed up. Obviously hitting a high point in 2003, but it still continues in recent times. But also, if you look at petitioning, in 1974, only 20% of the population had signed a petition. By 2006, it's nearly 70%. So it's quite interesting when we talk about doing things that inspire people to action, because I think actually instead of people saying, well, the government don't do anything, therefore there's no point protesting, petitioning them, actually the opposite's happened. People are realising, hang on, these people that we vote aren't doing what we want them to do. We're going to have to go and demand that they do it. And you know, throughout history, I think change comes because people demand it from below, whether it's women with votes or democracy itself, and so on. So I think we've got to always bear that in mind. But I also think, in terms of the question you always ask is, are there people around who will come and join us in these kind of campaigns? And I'm convinced that there are, because I meet loads of people who came into politics because of the anti-war marches in 2003. In fact, I'm one of those people. And you actually kind of making links to other things. So there's a couple of things I want to mention that are coming up in terms of activity. Because next Tuesday in North London, there's a Stop the War meeting that some of us have been organising, which is basically a look at 10 years after Iraq and basically looking at what's happened, what we can do. Lindsay Jones is going to be speaking at it. Sami Ramadani. Jeremy Corbyn, who's he's definitely one of the 5 people that John mentioned that is worth actually relating to inside Parliament. So that's next Tuesday, 7 o'clock at the old fire station at Maxon Road. Its details are on the Stop the War website. The other thing, just finally, is the point is increasingly civil liberties are being eroded because of the war, but they're also being eroded because of austerity and because of the cuts. The universal principle of citizenship, that John said, is being eroded. It's not the only universal principle that's being eroded. The welfare state is a universal right that people have to receive care at the point of need when they need it, regardless of their income status. The government is actually using austerity in the crisis to get rid of those rights as well. So I think we've got to look at joining up these different struggles. And one of the ways I think it's important of doing it is the People's Assembly Against Austerity, which is on the 22nd of June in central Westminster, which is actually backed by Stop the War and so on. I've got some leaflets at the back if anyone's interested in that, but I'll just leave you on that thought.
Thank you very much. Just at the back there then.
Just a quick question. You see with Shaka Ahmed, he's a Saudi citizen as well as a British resident. Is there anything the Saudi government has done or can do in bringing him back home? Seeing that they have a close relationship with the US, would there be anything that the British government and the Saudi government could do together?
You mean other than make life very, very difficult? I think that's the point. Actually, his Saudi citizenship or origin confuses the matter quite a lot, because for a long time we had this back and forth. Well, the Saudis say that they want him, the British say that they want him, and then the British say they don't want him, the Saudis say we don't want him, and America basically says, well, we haven't got a clue where to send this guy right now, and so they keep palming off the issue based on that. It's not an easy one, but the main thing and the most important thing is that his family are all here. His family are all British. His 4 British children, his wife is British, they want him back here, and that's all that matters. Whether he has citizenship status, residency status, whether he's an asylum seeker, whether he has no relationship to the UK whatsoever, it doesn't matter. His family are here, they want him here, and considering the UK's role in his rendition and torture, he should definitely be brought back here. And as far as I'm concerned, that's all that matters.
Well, all I would add to that is that he is a witness to the British intelligence services wrongdoing and complicity in torture. And I think that that remains the kind of glaringly obvious reason why the apparent keenness to have him back never has a result.
Not about Shaka Rama, but one of the things that we also campaign on, and unfortunately last month President Obama closed an office that he'd set up when he first became president, was to help with the resettlement of people in Guantanamo Bay who can't go back to their country of origin. More than half of the men in Guantanamo have actually been cleared for release, and in some cases they've actually been cleared for release for the past 5 or 6 years. And so the issue was that they should be able to be repatriated to third countries. For example, there was a Palestinian who there was no way that Israel was ever going to let him back into the Gaza Strip, so a third country was found for him. There's a huge number of Yemeni prisoners. 2010, Obama said they can't go back to Yemen. So again, there was once upon a time a search to find safe third countries for them to go to. Now, over 20 men in the first couple of years of Obama becoming president went to various European countries. In some cases, there were countries like France who had already taken back their nationals, but there were also countries like Spain who took 5 men just like that. So one of the things we also campaigned for is that countries like Britain should be doing exactly the same thing. So as well as Shaka Rama, there was a man called Ahmed Belbasha, who is an Algerian, who's actually wanted in Algeria. He's been sentenced in absentia to 20 years, and a few other Algerians have been sent back, and they're having an awful time. This is one of the things that doesn't often come out. Yes, release from Guantanamo Bay, but no, not further incarceration and further abuse and persecution. In fact, just last week there was a trial in Russia of a guy who was released, one of the first people to be released from Guantanamo Bay in 2004, but since 2005 until today, he's still there. He has been held in prison on some trumped-up charges, and he finally, 8 years later, so it's not just the Americans who take forever to get around to trying people, it's the Russians too, to actually have his trial, and there still has been no outcome in his case. So we asked for people like Ahmed Belbasha. He lived here for about 18 months, but as well for countries like Britain to take in other people who would be safer for them to come here than it would be for them to go back to their own country. There's a lot that we can be doing. Yeah.
Asim's just going to leave. Thank you very much, Asim, for joining us this evening. Have we got any other comments from the floor? Yeah.
We've heard a lot about Shaka Rama, but the reality is Shaka's wife is still here, Zin Rama is still here, his family is still here. So Victoria, I just wanted to ask you, how is it that these women draw strength? Obviously we've had our Killed Prisoners event about your book. How is it that these women draw strength from everything that they've been through? These are the wives of detainees in Guantanamo Bay, wives of people attacked by drone strikes. How is it that you found that? There's something that you once said that was very powerful, that did these women need me or did I need them?
Well, what almost everybody comes out of reading what they say in this book is the central thing is their faith. There's no two ways about it. And the way they talk about their faith and how it allows them to withstand all this cruelty is one of the most moving and wonderful things about them. And I think that is the answer.
Any other comments or questions? If we have Noel first, then please.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say something to the young man who said that he felt that he didn't get a fair crack of the whip because he's a Muslim. I am the only person in this room who has written to every MP in the land. It cost me hundreds of pounds. It was largely a waste of time because MPs have 2 receptacles. They have an in-tray for constituents and they have a bin for people who are not constituents. You're a constituent of an MP. If you're concerned about something, write to him. Go and see him. It's your right. Please do so. And anybody else who feels strongly about something. Thank you.
Basically, this is a direct question to Nadia. Since Shaka was arrested in Bagram, can you tell us what goes on there?
US Bagram Air Force Base. Yes, he was arrested there first. Can I ask Aisha to comment on that?
Do you want to know what happens there now, or do you want to know what happened there 10 years ago? Okay, well, there's a pretty long history because it was actually originally run by the Soviets and then the Americans took over, and now there's a Wendy's outside as proof of it. But what actually happened is that it was supposed to be a processing center before people were taken to Guantanamo Bay. If you've ever looked at WikiLeaks Guantanamo files, it's quite fantastic. It wasn't just the stuff they put in The Guardian, but it really is a very interesting read. Some of them are just 1.5 pages long, so it's not really that much to go through. But they were taken to Bagram, where they were apparently questioned. Mazen Beg said that Bagram was much worse than anything that Guantanamo Bay would ever be like. And many people who have been held there have said exactly the same thing. Not everybody who was held at Bagram has ended up in Guantanamo Bay. There was prisoner abuse, there have been deaths. There have been people who have been mutilated and crippled by their experiences in Bagram. There has been death, rape, beatings, all different kinds of things have happened. It's not just people in Guantanamo Bay. People who have been victims of extraordinary rendition have been taken to Bagram. People would like to think that there's nothing happening there now for the very simple reason that it's never mentioned in the newspapers. So if it's not mentioned, it means there's nothing happening, right? But what happened was that this time last year, the American government and the Afghan officials signed an agreement that they would hand control of Bagram back over to the Afghan authorities. The reason for that being is that because basically, while Obama said he was going to close down Guantanamo Bay, he very cleverly expanded Bagram by about 4 times its actual prisoner size. So it started, I think it had about 600 people by the time it went over to the Afghans last year. It actually had about nearly 2,500 prisoners. Now, of these prisoners, the vast majority were Afghans. And the reason, let's not pretend that the prison conditions in Afghanistan are nice, because they're absolutely awful. They've been condemned by the Red Cross, they've been condemned by the United Nations year after year. Torture and rape are rife in Afghan prisons. Not just of men, not just of women, but of children as well. So it's not a nice place to be caught up in. But what happened at Bagram was they made this agreement. There were various things. Now, one of the things that the Americans said that the Afghans had to do to get Bagram back was they had to instate across the whole country a system of administrative detention, which is effectively arbitrary detention, that they should hold prisoners without trial, without charges, for as long as they felt like doing. So this is actually apparently something that's unconstitutional in Afghanistan, but it was one of the conditions that the Americans stipulated. What the Afghans actually did, as soon as they got their hands on Bagram, was release most of the prisoners because they were being held there without charge and without trial. They just happened to be driving down the wrong road or had, something, their wheel was flat or something, so they ended up in Bagram. What they didn't cater for, and the Americans have kept control of, is that there were 58 foreign nationals held in Bagram at the time. So these are the people who didn't make it to Guantanamo Bay. Some of those people have been held there for at least 8 or 9 years. They do not have the same rights as Guantanamo prisoners. In some ways, really, Guantanamo is amazing compared to Bagram. So even things such as, for example, the habeas corpus rights, to be able to go before a judge and find out why it is that you've been held in prison is not a right that people in Bagram have been given. There was actually a whole case, there were 3 articles about it, I'll happily say I wrote one of them, on this particular issue about 5 months ago, and what they actually said was that because it's in Afghanistan, because it doesn't have the same jurisdiction laws as Guantanamo Bay, there are no habeas corpus rights for these men. So they are held without charge, without trial, without any prospects of anything, and effectively it's probably like being buried alive. And I have actually heard that they do have underground cabins where people are actually physically buried alive in Bagram, and that doesn't seem to be changing. So yeah, it's a lot worse, and it's still going on, but it's something we just really don't know very much about at all.
Thank you very much for that insight. Can I take one last question, Mrs. Ray?
I'm from the Save Shakarama campaign. I just wanted to show people we've got some resources here that might be interesting for you to have ideas about what you can do to help bring Shaka home. We've got some fact sheets here which give you more to do with Shaka's history, some list of ideas of what you can do, and also 2 model letters, one to William Hague and one to President Obama, which can help you with ideas of how to write letters. You don't have to write this particular one, but it can help give you ideas anyway. Okay, they're available here on the table when you come and sign the petition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're just going to have a concluding statement from each of our speakers. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, make one simple point in conclusion. Really, is that we've talked a great deal about the enormous number of tentacles which have spread out from the war on terror, about the prison regimes, about rendition, about the civil threats to civil liberties in various different forms, and we could list many more. And I think there's one simple point at the end of this: each one of these tentacles we have to attempt to cut off. Every single one of them. As they appear, we have to oppose them. But we also have to oppose the very heart of this project. And there is a heart to this project, and it's the business of the major powers in the world attempting to use their military capability to dominate large sections of the globe. That's where it started, with Afghanistan and Iraq, and that's where it's continuing, with the Western intervention in Mali, with the threats of intervention in Syria, with the air war in Libya. And we have to strike down the tentacles, but we also have to strike right at the heart of the system that produces all these things, and that's why the absolute centrality of opposing Western military intervention remains at the heart of this project.
Thank you. I'd just like to end by thanking everybody here tonight, and please sign the Shaka Armour petition as you leave. I mean, I can't thank everybody enough for being here. Please speak to Mrs. Ray at the store with regards to the Shaka Armour petition and how you can perhaps get involved on a larger scale. Just a quick announcement on up-and-coming events. 7th of April, 6 p.m. We have Tony Blair, 10 Royal Court Theatre. That's 7th April, 6 p.m. Also, we have on the 26th of March, 7 p.m. 10 years on from Iraq, stop the spread of war. Please do consult somebody here at the Stop the War table, and they can give you a bit more information on that. Thank you for joining us this evening. And if I can say a huge thank you to Beata, Rabia, SOAS Stop the War for joining us, and Adam for their help to make this event possible. Thank you very much.
It's true, I'm sorry, I can't help it. Right. Thank you. Okay.
Well, thank you.